You think you can handle me? Brad growled, clenching his fists so tightly that his knuckles cracked. You think your little silent act is going to work here at Lincoln High, amid the circle of cheering students? Aaliyah slowly raised her head. In her eyes flickered a cold glint, something that looked nothing like fear. I was never playing games, Brad. Her voice rang out strangely calm. I only hoped you wouldn't force me to show everyone who I really am. And just who are you? Brad sneered, completely unaware that in only 5 minutes he would be sprawled flat on the concrete floor while the entire school would be buzzing about one thing only. The most intense moment is right ahead. Don't look away. What happens next will take your breath away. Before we go any further, leave a comment and let us know where you're watching from. Hit like, drop a comment, and subscribe to the channel right now so you don't miss the story. The story begins on an autumn morning in the small town of Maplewood, Ohio, where fog still lingered on the streets before the sun could chase away the chill. The doors of Lincoln High School stood wide open as streams of students poured in, laughter and chatter echoing down the hallways. Amid the crowd, a 16-year-old black girl stepped through the threshold. Aaliyah Carter, newly transferred from Detroit. This was Aaliyah's 4th school transfer in just 3 years. Her family had moved around following her mother's work, Dr. Monica Carter, who had just taken a new position at the local hospital. For Monica, Maplewood offered the hope of a calmer life after years of stress in the big city. For Aaliyah, it meant another fresh start, and once again having to conceal her true self. On the surface, there was nothing remarkable about Aaliyah. She was of average height, slim build, with black curly hair tied neatly back. That day, she wore a pair of plain jeans and a gray sweatshirt, blending in like any other student trying to adjust to a new school. When the teacher called her name for introduction, Aaliyah merely nodded, speaking softly. She avoided the eyes of her classmates, choosing a seat in the corner, wishing she could just disappear. But none of them knew that behind her calm exterior, Aaliyah was hiding a secret that could shake the entire school. Because Aaliyah was actually the Michigan State Junior MMA champion, someone who had undergone 4 years of grueling training at one of Detroit's most renowned gyms. At just 16, Aaliyah already had dozens of fights under her belt, with overwhelming victories thanks to her devastating left hook, powerful enough to break an opponent's ribs. Her ground fighting skills always made her coach proud. In the ring, Aaliyah had forced even grown fighters to stumble, yet all of that had to remain hidden. The night before leaving Detroit, her mother sat beside her, held her hand tightly, and pleaded, "Sweetheart, in this new place, let's start over. Don't let anyone know what you've accomplished. People often get scared when they hear about your abilities. Please just try to live like a normal student." "Okay." Aaliyah silently nodded. She understood her mother's concern, but unease gnawed at her heart. Back in Detroit, Aaliyah was respected not because she flaunted her strength, but because she never allowed herself to be bullied. She had started training in MMA at 12 after being assaulted by older kids. Martial arts didn't just give her strength, it became her shield, protecting her confidence and dignity. Now, being forced to bury that part of herself felt like smothering her own identity. At lunchtime, Aaliyah sat alone at the back table of the cafeteria, opening a small lunchbox. She tried to appear normal, keeping her head down to avoid curious stares. The noise around her made her feel isolated. Deep inside, she hoped that after a few weeks, people would grow used to her presence, and she could quietly get through her high school years in Maplewood without trouble. That afternoon, when she returned home, the new apartment still smelled faintly of paint. Her mother, Monica, was busy preparing dinner after her first day at the hospital. As Aaliyah stepped into the kitchen, Monica looked up with a gentle smile and asked softly, "How was your first day, honey?" "It was fine, Mom, just like any other first day at a new school," Aaliyah answered quietly, masking the emptiness inside. "Did you make any new friends?" "It's still too soon to tell, Mom." Monica gazed at her daughter for a long while with the eyes of a mother who had seen her child start over too many times in unfamiliar places. She could sense the heaviness in Aaliyah's heart, but she didn't ask further. They had both learned to understand each other through silence after countless relocations. That night, Aaliyah lay on her bed staring at the ceiling. She thought of Detroit, of the smell of sweat mixed with leather in the gym, of the pounding rhythm of cheers every time she landed a decisive punch. There she was, not just an ordinary girl. She was someone no one dared to mess with. But here in Maplewood, she was simply the new student, a quiet face among the bustling hallways. Aaliyah knew well that new kids often became easy targets for bullies. She had seen that story play out too many times, and deep inside she sensed it was only a matter of time before her secret would be tested. Outside her window, the streetlight cast a dim golden glow across her face. She whispered to herself, "As long as I stay quiet, everything will be fine. I can hide it. I won't cause trouble." But another voice, softer yet resolute, echoed within her heart. "No one can hide forever. The time will come when you must stand up, and when that happens, you will no longer be just an ordinary girl." Aaliyah closed her eyes, willing sleep to come, but deep down she knew her peaceful days at Lincoln High wouldn't last. What once helped her survive in Detroit would inevitably return. And when it did, the entire school would witness a truth no one had ever expected. The first day had passed seemingly peacefully, but Aaliyah knew well that such calm was only temporary. In the world of high school, especially in small towns, a new student was like a fish dropped into a pond. Every eye turned toward them, curious, probing, sometimes even scornful. And Aaliyah, with her different skin color and soft-spoken voice, was an easy target. The next day at lunch, as the bell rang and students flooded into the cafeteria, the place quickly filled to capacity. Aaliyah walked in carrying a simple tray of food, a sandwich, and a carton of milk. She deliberately chose a corner seat away from the loud groups. All she wanted was to eat quietly, unnoticed. But in this school, silence was a luxury. A large shadow fell across her table. Aaliyah looked up. Standing before her was a tall, broad-shouldered boy with a face full of smugness. Behind him trailed two friends, one short and skinny, with narrow, calculating eyes, the other lanky, with a mocking smirk plastered on his lips. The tall boy dropped heavily into the chair across from her, slamming his palm against the table. "Hey, new girl, I'm Brad Thompson. This is my territory, and these are my friends, Kyle and Jake." Aaliyah set her tray down and kept her voice steady. "Nice to meet you. I'm Aaliyah." Aaliyah. Brad drew out her name, his eyes full of disdain. "Where you from? Detroit?" Kyle let out a mocking laugh. "Detroit, huh? Big city. You think you're all cool coming here from there?" Aaliyah shook her head, speaking softly. "No, I just want to study like everyone else." Brad narrowed his eyes and leaned closer. "The thing is, we've got our own rules here. New people respect the old ones, especially those who think being from the big city makes them better than us." A chill crept down Aaliyah's spine. That tone, that arrogant posture, she had seen it before in Detroit. Bullies were always the same, convinced that others were weak, easy to break. She slowly rose, intending to leave before things escalated, but Jake's hand came down on her shoulder, stopping her. "Hey, where you going? We're not finished talking." Aaliyah drew a deep breath, forcing herself to hold back. Her voice turned firmer. "What do you want?" Brad leaned back, smirking. "Simple. $5 a day. Call it protection money. Otherwise, well, life in this school could get real tough for a new girl, especially a black girl." The last words dripped with emphasis, making Aaliyah clench her fists under the table. Her heart raced, not from fear, but from anger bubbling inside. Yet the image of her mother flashed in her mind. "You promised me we'd live normal lives. No trouble, no violence." She lifted her head, meeting Brad's eyes with a determined glint. "I'll think about it." Brad chuckled scornfully, tapping his fingers on the table. "Fine, I'll give you 1 day. Tomorrow morning I'll get your answer. And listen, don't bother running to the teachers. They all like us. My dad sponsors the football team here. Got it?" Brad stood, signaling his friends to follow. Before leaving, he leaned close to Aaliyah's face, his voice a low, threatening whisper. "Don't make me look bad, Aaliyah. You don't want to end up a laughingstock." Their laughter echoed through the cafeteria, mingling with the curious whispers of other students. Aaliyah sat frozen, crushing her sandwich in her hand until it fell apart. In her mind, she pictured herself throwing a clean punch, knocking Brad flat in seconds. Just one move, and it would all be over. But her promise to her mother shackled her. That afternoon, on her way home, Aaliyah calculated quickly. $5 a day meant $150 a month. Over the school year, more than 1,000. But she knew bullies like Brad never stopped there. Today, it was 5. Tomorrow, it could be 10. Once you gave in, they'd hold the leash forever. When she arrived home, her mother was busy preparing dinner, the delicious smell filling their small kitchen. Monica smiled warmly and asked, "How was your second day at school, sweetheart?" "It was fine, Mom. Nothing special," Aaliyah replied, avoiding her mother's eyes. Monica studied her daughter for a long moment. She had grown used to Aaliyah hiding her feelings, but this time the silence weighed heavier. Still, she didn't press, only said softly, "Remember, if something happens, you don't have to face it alone." Aaliyah nodded slightly, but inside, she knew the truth. This was a battle she would eventually have to face herself. That night, she lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Brad's sneer, Jake's heavy hand on her shoulder, they replayed vividly in her mind. Back in Detroit, she had learned one lesson: once you let a bully cross the line, they never stop. Her promise to her mother pulled her back, but the fighter's instinct inside whispered urgently, "You can't let them keep going." In the darkness, Aaliyah knew with certainty tomorrow everything would begin. The next morning, the sky over Maplewood was clear, but Aaliyah's heart felt heavy. She knew Brad would demand her answer today. Every step down the hallways of Lincoln High seemed heavier than usual, yet her face remained calm. To others, she was just the shy new girl, quiet and reserved. But inside, a storm was raging. The moment she stepped into the building, she found Brad and his 2 friends blocking the stairway. His arms were crossed over his chest, a smirk tugging at the corner of his lips. "So, Aaliyah, have you thought it over?" Brad's voice was sharp and direct. Aaliyah met his gaze, her voice steady but firm. "I won't pay you." Brad's smile froze. For a moment the air seemed to go still. Then he laughed, but the sound was dry and cold. "Oh, I see. I hoped you'd be smarter than that, but if you want to play the hero, fine. The game's just beginning." He turned away, but his words felt like a sentence already cast. And just as he promised, that day became a nightmare for Aaliyah. In chemistry class, Kyle accidentally bumped her desk, sending all her notes scattering to the floor. As Aaliyah bent to pick them up, he deliberately planted his foot on her notebook, smearing dirt across the clean pages. "Oops, sorry. Didn't mean to," Kyle said with mock innocence. Laughter rippled around the room. Aaliyah pressed her lips tight, silently gathering her pages, her heart boiling, though her face showed only restraint. Between classes, Jake shoved her hard in the crowded hallway. She slammed into the wall, her shoulder aching. He glanced back with a crooked grin. "Watch where you're going, clumsy." The morning was a constant barrage of harassment. Aaliyah knew this was Brad's punishment for her defiance. Still, she didn't react. She didn't fight back. She only clenched her teeth and endured a voice in her heart, reminding her, "You promised your mother no trouble." By lunchtime, the routine humiliation escalated. Sitting at her usual corner table, Aaliyah tried to eat quietly, but Brad wouldn't let it go. This time he wasn't alone. Nearly half the football team trailed behind him, hulking boys with hard stares. Brad strode up to her table and slammed his hand down, rattling her tray. "Listen up, everyone." Brad's voice rang out across the cafeteria. "We've got a new girl here who thinks she doesn't need to follow the rules. She's from Detroit, and she thinks she's better than us." The cafeteria fell silent. All eyes turned toward Aaliyah, many anticipating a show. Brad snatched her tray, lifted it high, then flipped it. Hot soup poured over her jeans, vegetables and bread scattering onto the floor. "Look at that clumsy much," Brad mocked. Laughter erupted. A few students raised their phones to record the scene. Aaliyah sat still, staring at the stains spreading across her clothes, the heat seeping through the fabric. Her heartbeat thundered, her hands trembling, not with fear, but with rage that had been caged too long. Brad leaned close, his voice dripping with mockery. "Clean it up, or are you calling Mommy to do it for you?" The cafeteria roared with louder laughter, yet Aaliyah remained motionless. Slowly she rose to her feet, her eyes locked on Brad's. For a moment the noise faded. Her voice was soft but clear, cutting through the air. "You just made a big mistake." Brad smirked, thinking she was bluffing. "Oh yeah, what are you gonna do, tell the principal or call Mommy to rescue you?" Aaliyah didn't reply. She only picked up her backpack and walked away, leaving behind laughter and mocking stares. In the girls' bathroom, she stood before the mirror, scrubbing at the stains to no avail. Tears welled in her eyes, but she held them back, not because she was weak, but because her anger refused to let her cry. 4 years of MMA training had taught her to control her temper, to resist the instinct to strike back. But this time restraint felt unbearable. Brad's smirk, the cafeteria's laughter, it all echoed in her mind. Finally, she pulled out her phone and dialed a familiar number. A deep, warm voice answered. "Aaliyah, it's been a while. How are you doing?" "I'm okay. But I need advice, Coach Marcus." It was Marcus Johnson, her old coach from Detroit, the man who had taught her every punch, every hold, and above all, the spirit of a fighter. Aaliyah quickly told him what had happened. Silence hung on the other end for a few seconds. Then Marcus sighed. "Kid, I understand why your mother wanted the secret kept. But remember this, if you let them keep going, it'll only get worse. Sometimes silence is no longer an option." "So what do you think I should do?" Aaliyah asked, her voice trembling slightly. "You have to stand up for yourself. But listen, no serious injuries, not in front of too many people. Just show them you're not an easy target. Remember, the most important thing, you have the right to defend yourself. No one can take that away." Aaliyah bit her lip, a weight lifting off her shoulders. The call ended, but a new fire ignited within her. That afternoon, she walked out of school with her eyes burning bright. Her patience had reached its limit. She knew if she stayed silent, Brad and his gang would only push further, and she also knew it was only a matter of time before her secret came to light. In the pale golden glow of the afternoon sun, Aaliyah's small frame stood tall and proud. She was no longer just the new girl. She was a storm quietly gathering, waiting for the moment to break free. That evening, the small Carter apartment was filled with the smell of roasted chicken that Aaliyah's mother had prepared. Outside the window, Maplewood was wrapped in the familiar stillness of a small town. But inside Aaliyah's heart, that stillness only made the weight heavier. She sat at her desk, eyes fixed on a blank notebook page, though her mind was swarmed with images. Brad's mocking grin, Kyle and Jake's sneering glances, the laughter that erupted when her tray of food was dumped all over her in front of the entire school. Everyone had witnessed it, and Aaliyah knew she had just been marked as an easy target. She picked up her phone, hesitated for a few seconds, then quickly dialed a number she had long memorized. On the other end, a familiar, steady, and warm voice answered. "Aaliyah, I didn't expect you to call this late. What's wrong?" Aaliyah trembled slightly. The emotion she had bottled up for 2 whole days suddenly spilled over. "Coach Marcus, I'm in trouble at the new school." There was a pause on the line, followed by a sigh. "Tell me everything." And so, for more than 10 minutes, Aaliyah poured it all out, the first confrontation in the cafeteria. Brad and his gang blocking her way, the endless taunts in the hallways, and finally the humiliating moment when food was poured over her in front of everyone. Her voice wavered at times, but she didn't cry. Marcus Johnson, the coach who had trained Aaliyah since she was 12, listened quietly. He was the one who had seen the shy, frail little girl transform into a true fighter. To him, Aaliyah wasn't just a student. She was living proof of resilience. When she finished, Marcus finally spoke. "I understand. Aaliyah, listen. Your mother wants you to keep your abilities a secret, and that's not wrong. But sometimes silence is what feeds the bully." Aaliyah gripped the phone tightly, her heartbeat quickening. "You mean I should fight? But I promised my mom." Marcus cut her off, his voice firm but never harsh. "No, I'm not telling you to pick fights. I never taught you martial arts so you could show off or hurt people. But remember, this martial arts exist to protect. You have the right to defend yourself. If you don't, they'll keep pushing, and it will only get worse." He paused briefly, then continued. "Be smart, Aaliyah. Don't strike first. Don't do it in a crowded place, and never cause serious injury. But one time is enough to show them you are not prey." His words struck deep, echoing in her mind like a bell shattering her inner conflict. "Coach Marcus, I'm afraid if I fight back I won't be able to control myself." Aaliyah's voice quivered. "I trained you to control yourself. You're not only strong in body, but also strong in mind. Remember this, the strongest strike isn't the knockout punch, it's knowing when to stop. I trust you." At that, Aaliyah's vision blurred. She didn't cry out of weakness, but because in that moment she realized she wasn't alone. Marcus's voice grew gentler. "Aaliyah, I know you want to keep your promise to your mother, but if you keep enduring this, you'll lose something greater. You'll lose respect, your confidence, and eventually you'll hate yourself for not standing up." "Do you understand?" Silence hung heavy. Inside her, two worlds clashed. On one side, the promise she had made. On the other, the undeniable truth. If she didn't stand up, she would remain a target forever. At last, she whispered, "I understand, Coach." Marcus chuckled softly. "Good. And remember, Aaliyah, whatever happens, I believe in you. Turn your anger into strength and use it the right way." The call ended, but his words lingered in her mind like a steady flame pushing away the darkness. That night, Aaliyah couldn't sleep. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Marcus's advice burned within her, consuming her fear and leaving only clarity behind. She thought back to her very first day in the Detroit gym. She had been a thin, timid girl, constantly bullied, who came to Marcus out of desperation. He had taught her not just punches, locks, and holds, but how to confront fear itself. The strongest strike is believing in yourself. She sat up, walked to the mirror, and stared into her own eyes. For the first time since arriving in Maplewood, she saw it again, the look that had made opponents hesitate, the cold, unwavering gaze of a fighter. She whispered, "I promised Mom, but I also promise myself I won't let them step on me again." The next morning, Aaliyah walked into school transformed. Not confrontational, not defiant, just calm, steady, carrying the quiet weight of a decision made. Brad and his gang were waiting, their eyes full of challenge. But this time, when they met Aaliyah's gaze, their smirks faltered for just a second. Something had changed, something they couldn't name. Aaliyah knew the day she would draw the line was coming fast. And when it did, her secret could no longer remain hidden. Friday afternoon, the atmosphere at Maplewood High was thick with tension. Normally, the weekend brought excitement, but today, an unusual current spread through the halls. Word had traveled like wildfire. Brad and his crew had challenged Aaliyah to settle things after school. After school, back parking lot, one student whispered, eyes gleaming with anticipation. Heads nodded, secret texts flew between phones. Everyone wanted to witness the new girl being taught a lesson. Aaliyah stepped out of her last class, her backpack heavy on her shoulders. Her steps were steady, deliberate. In her ears, Coach Marcus's words echoed again and again. "Don't strike first. Don't cause serious harm. One time is enough, they'll understand." As she turned the last hallway, she felt dozens of eyes on her, some curious, some pitying, others cruel, eager for a spectacle. But Aaliyah didn't lower her head this time. Her gaze was fixed forward, dark eyes calm and unflinching, as if daring the whispers to continue. The back parking lot was wide, the faded white lines barely visible on the asphalt. Already dozens of students had gathered, forming a rough circle. Shouts and whistles filled the air, as Brad emerged with his sidekicks Kyle and Jake grinning with confidence. Brad, wearing his half-zipped varsity jacket, raised a hand to hush the crowd. He looked Aaliyah up and down, then smirked. "New girl, I warned you, this isn't Detroit, this is Maplewood, and here the weak learn to obey." Laughter exploded from the circle. Kyle and Jake slapped hands, eager for the show. Aaliyah dropped her backpack to the ground, squaring her shoulders. She said nothing, only fixed Brad with a frozen stare. The silence made him uneasy. "What's this, no comeback, or are you too scared to speak?" Brad sneered, stepping closer. Cheers rose around them. Phones were raised, ready to record the moment. Brad moved first. He shoved her hard in the shoulder. Aaliyah staggered back half a step but stayed on her feet. The crowd roared. "Hit her, Bradshaw! Her who's boss!" Someone shouted. Brad chuckled darkly and lunged with a punch. Aaliyah tilted her head, the fist slicing past her cheek by inches. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Kyle yelled, "Come on, Brad, don't embarrass yourself." Grinding his teeth, Brad swung again, harder, faster. But this time Aaliyah raised her arm, deflecting the punch cleanly. The precision made Brad stumble. In that moment, Aaliyah knew the time had come. She drew a deep breath. Her body shifted muscles, remembering every drill, every sparring match. As Brad rushed in again, Aaliyah pivoted, dropped her weight, and redirected his momentum. In one swift motion, Brad lost balance and collapsed onto the asphalt. The crowd fell silent. Brad growled, scrambling up, face flushed with humiliation. He charged again, but Aaliyah didn't dodge this time. She twisted her hips and snapped a side kick, stopping just short of his chest. The gust of air from her strike brushed against him close enough to show that if she had wanted, he'd be on the ground again. Lowering her leg, she stood tall. No mocking smile, no taunt, just unwavering eyes. Brad froze. In those eyes, he saw something he had never encountered before: absolute control, restrained power, and a courage that didn't need to be loud. Kyle and Jake exchanged nervous glances, their faces pale. The crowd was so quiet, Brad's ragged breathing was all that could be heard. Phones that had been raised slowly lowered. Nobody felt like cheering anymore. Seconds stretched endlessly. Finally, Brad, the self-proclaimed king of Maplewood High, took a step back. "This isn't over," he muttered, but the arrogance had drained from his voice. Aaliyah didn't respond. She picked up her backpack, slung it over her shoulder, and walked straight through the circle of students. All eyes followed her, but there was no laughter anymore. Behind her, Brad stood frozen, gripped by a feeling he had never known before: fear. That night, Maplewood buzzed with chatter. Videos of the fight spread through group chats. But what people talked about wasn't Brad's fall. It was the chilling calm of Aaliyah. She hadn't needed a knockout blow. Just a few precise moves had said it all. "I am not prey." Back in her small room, Aaliyah sat before the mirror, her gaze steady. She knew everything would change now. The secret was no longer a secret, but instead of fear, she felt relief. Because at last, she had stood up. Monday morning, the hallways of Maplewood High were usually loud and chaotic, but today felt different. Whispers, sideways glances, muffled giggles, all of it revolved around one name: Aaliyah Carter. The fight in the parking lot on Friday had become the story of the weekend. The video, first shared in a private student group chat, had spread across the entire school. Everyone had seen the moment Brad, the boy who once ruled Maplewood, through fists and intimidation, stumbled and fell before Aaliyah's calm, measured hands. The laughter, the mocking whispers, the careless insults, all were gone. Now, when Aaliyah walked into class, the eyes that followed her held a strange mix of fear and curiosity. Brad was at school that day too, but he walked silently, head down. The varsity jacket that had once been a symbol of status now hung on him like a reminder of his humiliation. Those who once clapped him on the back and laughed along as he bullied others now avoided his gaze. Kyle and Jake, his sidekicks, didn't dare bring up the parking lot. They whispered among themselves, but whenever Aaliyah passed by, their voices died instantly. Aaliyah didn't seek glory from any of this. She still sat at her seat in the back, still quietly opened her books as before. But everyone noticed there were no more teasing whispers, no prank notes left on her desk, no snickers when she walked past. At lunch, the cafeteria bustled as usual. The same place that had once echoed with mocking laughter about the new girl grew unnaturally quiet when Aaliyah entered. Every head turned, waiting to see where she would sit. A group of students who had previously stayed out of everything suddenly waved her over. "Hey, Aaliyah, come sit with us." She blinked, surprised. They had never acknowledged her before, but she smiled softly, nodded and walked over. The table lit up with energy. Questions came quickly. "When did you start training? Are you like some kind of hidden master that day? How did you drop Brad so fast?" Aaliyah only shook her head and replied with a small smile, "I was just defending myself, nothing more." The simplicity of her answer only deepened the respect. She could have bragged, but she chose not to. Meanwhile, Brad sat in a far corner, his lunch untouched. Each time he heard her name whispered nearby, his fists clenched tighter. From the self-proclaimed king of the school, he had become a joke, and the one who brought him down was the new girl he had once dismissed completely. His pride was shredded, and though he burned for revenge, he could never erase the memory of collapsing in front of everyone. A new fear had rooted itself inside him, but it wasn't just Brad who changed. The entire climate of Maplewood High shifted. Bullies who once prayed freely now hesitated. Whenever they considered targeting someone, their eyes darted unconsciously toward Aaliyah. Her mere presence was enough to make them think twice. This new atmosphere gave relief to many students who had long been victims. In classrooms, hallways, even on the sports field, mocking laughter had noticeably decreased. In its place was caution, measured steps before cruelty. Some teachers noticed too. Mr. Brown, the PE teacher, overheard students whispering about the fight. He watched Aaliyah for a long moment, then nodded slightly, his expression tinged with both surprise and admiration. That evening, when Aaliyah returned home, her mother, Angela Carter, placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "I heard about what happened at school." Aaliyah tensed, bracing for disappointment, but Angela only sighed, her eyes warm. "I know you tried to hold back. You didn't go looking for violence, you only defended yourself. That makes me proud." Aaliyah lowered her head, a quiet smile tugging at her lips. She knew she had chosen the path Marcus had guided her toward. The next day in history class, the teacher organized group discussions. When Aaliyah spoke up to analyze a point, something unexpected happened. The entire class fell silent and listened. No interruptions, no snide remarks. That respect left her momentarily flustered, but it also filled her with something new. For the first time since arriving in Maplewood, she felt like she belonged. The reversal of power didn't come with noise or showmanship. It came from a simple truth a girl once dismissed had proven her real strength. And that strength wasn't just in her kicks or blocks. It was in her restraint, her resolve, and her refusal to bend. Maplewood High had changed, and at the center of that change was Aaliyah Carter. The rumors about Aaliyah Carter didn't stay confined to Maplewood High. The parking lot video had slipped out of private student chats and into neighboring schools. Westside High, a school infamous for its cocky basketball team and students who loved to prove themselves, was the first to take notice. Westside had long looked down on Maplewood as the weak rival in every sports matchup. So when they heard that a new girl had managed to drop Brad, the so-called terror of Maplewood, they couldn't sit still. To them, it was an insult. One Friday afternoon, as Aaliyah prepared to leave school, she noticed the tension in the air. Right at the front gates, a group of unfamiliar students stood waiting. Their red jackets emblazoned with the West Side logo gave them away instantly. At the front was Travis Miller, captain of the West Side basketball team, known not only for his skills on the court, but for his aggressive temper. He stepped forward with a mocking grin. "You must be Aaliyah Carter, huh? Word is you dropped Brad." Maplewood really has to rely on a girl now. Laughter erupted from the group behind him. Nearby, Maplewood students froze, realizing this wasn't a random encounter, it was a public challenge. Aaliyah tightened her grip on her backpack strap, her gaze calm but wary. I didn't drop anyone to prove anything. I only defended myself when attacked. Travis barked a laugh, his voice booming across the courtyard. Defend yourself, then prove it. We want to see if you're really as strong as they say, or if it was just dumb luck. The air grew tense. Maplewood students held their breath, including Brad. His face paled as he remembered what it felt like to collapse under Aaliyah's control. Aaliyah inhaled deeply. Coach Marcus's words replayed in her mind. Not every fight is worth taking, but if standing your ground is the only way to keep respect, then fight with your whole heart. She set her backpack down, eyes locked on Travis. If you insist, I won't run. But remember this, I don't fight to brag. I fight to protect the truth. The circle formed quickly as students from both schools crowded in. Phone cameras clicked on. Travis lunged first, his tall frame blotting out the sun. He swung a heavy punch toward her, but Aaliyah pivoted, slipping aside so his fist cut only air. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Before he could recover, Aaliyah countered with a swift roundhouse kick to his side. It wasn't full force, but precise enough to knock him off balance. Travis stumbled back, face burning with humiliation. A voice jeered from behind him, West Side's captain, getting pushed around by a girl. Fury twisted Travis's features. With a roar, he charged again, unleashing a flurry of punches, relying on brute strength to overwhelm her. But Aaliyah stayed composed, dodging, blocking, parrying with flawless technique. She didn't strike wildly. She waited. And when his frustration left an opening, she spun, driving a powerful roundhouse kick across his chest. Crack. Travis collapsed onto the asphalt. Phones shook as they captured the impact. Silence gripped the crowd for a heartbeat, then Maplewood students erupted in cheers. The West Side crew stood stunned, unable to believe their captain had been floored. Clutching his chest, Travis gasped for breath, rage burning in his eyes, but his legs trembled too much to rise. Aaliyah didn't advance to finish him. She stood tall, her voice ringing clear. I told you, I don't fight to prove myself, but if anyone still thinks Maplewood is weak, remember this, we can stand strong. Her words cut deep into West Side's pride. The red-jacketed students awkwardly pulled Travis to his feet and shuffled away, leaving behind a roaring Maplewood crowd. That night, social media lit up again. The new video spread like wildfire, Aaliyah's name now stamped firmly across it. Some dubbed her the Silent Warrior. Some mocked Travis, but many praised the girl, who had stood tall against an entire rival school. For Aaliyah, the victory was more than just a fight. It was a turning point. From a new girl dismissed and overlooked, she had become a symbol of resolve and courage. After the confrontation with the West Side crew, the name Aaliyah Carter spread through Maplewood High like wildfire. In just 1 week, she had gone from the quiet new girl who kept to herself in the back of the classroom to the subject of every hallway whisper, cafeteria conversation, and social media post. What stunned people wasn't just that Aaliyah had beaten Brad or taken down Travis. What struck them was how she stood her ground, without boasting, without seeking attention, fighting only when forced to defend herself and the truth. Not long ago, many of her classmates had seen Aaliyah as an outsider, a quiet black girl who rarely spoke and seemed hard to approach. But now, their eyes were different. When Aaliyah walked into class, the disdain was gone. In its place was respect and often admiration. A few girls nervously approached her and whispered, "Could you maybe teach us some self-defense moves?" Meanwhile, those who had once mocked her now passed silently, heads lowered. Even Brad had changed. After his humiliation, his swagger had vanished. One afternoon in the library, he quietly approached her and murmured, "I owe you an apology. I was wrong." Aaliyah didn't say much. She just nodded and gave a small smile. To her, forgiveness was sometimes stronger than any punch. The video of her fight with Travis spread at lightning speed. Student forums buzzed, and even parents shared it online as a lesson in not judging people by appearances. A local newspaper ran a piece titled "The Girl from Maplewood and the Lesson of Courage." It stressed that Aaliyah didn't represent violence, she represented dignity and justice. At Maplewood High, even the principal acknowledged it. At Monday's assembly, he stood before the school and declared, "We've just seen a clear example. True strength doesn't lie in muscle, but in resolve. Learn from Aaliyah Carter. She's shown us that respect is earned through the right actions." Applause thundered across the auditorium. Sitting among her peers, Aaliyah lowered her head, slightly feeling a quiet warmth spread through her chest. From that moment on, Maplewood High was no longer a place where bullies ran unchecked. Any mocking or intimidation was quickly silenced, not by teachers, but by students themselves. Word spread, "Don't forget Maplewood has Aaliyah." But Aaliyah knew she couldn't always be the one to step in. So she began holding small lunchtime sessions, showing her peers basic self-defense techniques. Not everyone could fight off bigger opponents, but at the very least, they could learn to stand firm and not let fear control them. This only deepened her popularity. Many began calling her the school's silent big sister. For students who had once been victims, Aaliyah had become a living source of inspiration. One late afternoon, Aaliyah visited the old gym where Coach Marcus still trained students. He was mopping the floor when she entered, and his face lit up. "You did the right thing, Aaliyah. I've been keeping up. You didn't fight to show off, you fought to protect. That's the true spirit of martial arts." She stayed quiet for a moment, then sighed. "But I'm scared, Coach. I'm scared I'm becoming a symbol I never asked to be. I just wanted to live quietly." Marcus placed a firm hand on her shoulder, his voice warm. "Sometimes the ones who don't seek the light are exactly the ones who need to shine. You didn't choose to be a symbol, but you became one. So use it not with fear, but to help others." His words settled into her heart like a steady flame. Despite the praise, Aaliyah still felt the weight pressing down. She wasn't a superhero, just a 16-year-old girl with homework, family worries, and dreams for the future. But each morning when she walked into school and saw students who once looked beaten now smiling, standing taller, she knew the change meant more than anything. She hadn't just defended herself, she had sparked courage in others, and that more than any victory was her greatest triumph. The story seemed to calm after Aaliyah's victories and the cultural shift at Cedar Valley High, but life was never that simple. When a black girl dared to stand tall, society built on prejudice wasn't so quick to accept it. This time the challenge came not from a parking lot or a fight, but from a colder, harsher arena, the law. Aaliyah Carter entered the new school year with every eye on her. The same students who once mocked her now whispered admiration. Those who had laughed at her skin color, her natural curls, now used her very name as encouragement in the gym. "Be strong like Aaliyah." But just as the light began to shine, shadows gathered to dim it. Brad, the boy Aaliyah had defeated in the parking lot, could not swallow his humiliation. His family had money, influence, and above all, a burning desire to reclaim their pride. It wasn't long before a lawsuit was filed at the local courthouse. In it, Brad accused Aaliyah of assaulting him viciously, causing physical and emotional harm. The news spread like wildfire. In school hallways, on social media, everyone buzzed with debate. Some insisted Aaliyah had only defended herself. Others claimed she went too far and needed to be punished as an example. Cedar Valley seemed divided in two, one side defending the brave black girl, the other demanding punishment to maintain order and discipline. The day Aaliyah received the summons, she froze. The stark black letters on white paper, the red seal. It was like ice water poured over her pride. Her mother, Linda Carter, sat quietly in their small kitchen. She had spent her life fighting to raise her daughter, but never had she seen Aaliyah's eyes so weighed down. "You did the right thing, Aaliyah," her mother said, her voice trembling. "You only defended yourself. Don't let them make you doubt that." Aaliyah nodded, but inside the anxiety churned. She knew that in the cold chambers of courtrooms, justice didn't always side with the truth, especially when the opponent was Brad's family, who could hire the best lawyers, bribe medical experts to write false reports, and manipulate the media narrative. The trial date drew closer, and Cedar Valley held its breath. Newspapers ran headlines calling it the teen lawsuit shaking the town. Tabloids twisted the story further, the dangerous black belt girl, or teen karate fighter assaults classmate. Each headline cut into Aaliyah like a blade. She had never sought fame, she only wanted to study to be respected like any other student. Now, her image was being painted as a threat. When the court session opened, the room was packed. In the gallery were Cedar Valley students there to support her curious parents, hungry reporters, and cold eyes waiting for her to fall. Brad appeared with his arm in a sling, his face feigning weakness. At his side was a polished, sharp-tongued attorney. Every statement he delivered felt like a dagger aimed straight at Aaliyah. She didn't just defend herself. She deliberately took my client down with dangerous techniques. This was violence, not self-defense. Aaliyah's heart pounded, but as she glanced behind her, she saw familiar faces: Jordan, the white classmate who had first defended her in class; Emily, the small girl Brad had once bullied; and other students who had witnessed that day. They sat, unwavering eyes fixed on her, silently saying, "We're here for you." Witnesses took the stand one by one. Some testified that Aaliyah only defended herself. Others, pressured by Brad's family, claimed she had used excessive force. Each word seemed to drag her deeper into a pit. Then a new voice rang out, firm, steady. It was Mr. Daniels, the karate instructor who had trained Aaliyah since she was 10. He stood tall, eyes fixed on the judge. Karate never teaches students to strike first. I watched Aaliyah grow up. Every move she's ever learned came from a spirit of defense. If she hadn't fought back that day, she might have been the one in the hospital. This was not violence. This was survival. The courtroom fell silent. His words echoed like a bell. The trial wasn't over, but the storm had laid everything bare. For Aaliyah, this was more than a legal battle. It was a fight for dignity, for truth, and for every other black child in town who faced suspicion and injustice every day. Inside her, a vow rose like fire. If I fall today, they'll use it as an excuse to crush the dreams of others like me. But if I stand, I'll carve out a path for them. The door of justice could slam shut at any moment, but one thing was certain: no one could take away her faith. And that faith was the only strength she needed to walk through the darkest days of her life. That morning, Cedar Valley seemed to hold its breath. The county courthouse had become the focus, not just for the town, but for neighboring communities as well. People lined up outside the doors, phones and cameras, ready to capture every moment. For some, this was just a teen trial with unusual attention. But for Cedar Valley's black community, it was life or death proof of whether justice truly existed for children like Aaliyah. Inside, the courtroom hung heavy with tension, like a curtain ready to drop. Aaliyah sat at the defendant's table, hands clenched but her eyes steadier than ever. She had endured brutal fights, ridicule, prejudice, and false accusations. Now she knew this wasn't only about her story. The elderly judge entered, banged the gavel, and intoned, "Court is now in session." Brad's lawyer spoke first, presenting an arsenal of carefully arranged evidence and crafted testimonies. His words cut sharp. "Your Honor, Aaliyah Carter is not simply a student. She is a danger. If the court does not act, who can say what will happen when she defends herself again?" The room rippled with murmurs, eyes flicking toward Aaliyah with doubt. But in the gallery, Jordan, the white classmate once bullied by Brad, stood hand raised. The judge allowed him to speak. Jordan's hands shook as he gripped the microphone, but his voice rang clear. "I was there in the parking lot. Brad and his crew attacked first. If not for Aaliyah, I would have been the one in the hospital. She's not a danger. She's the one who protected me." His words pierced through the fog of lies. One after another, Emily and other students rose to speak. They described Brad's long history of bullying, how Aaliyah had always stayed silent, and how that day she had no choice but to fight back. Finally, the judge banged his gavel again, voice solemn. Having reviewed the testimonies, the evidence, and the witness accounts, this court finds Aaliyah Carter is not guilty. Her actions were lawful self-defense. The room erupted. Cheers and gasps collided. Aaliyah exhaled, tears brimming. Her mother, Linda, wrapped her arms around her and whispered, "You did it, Aaliyah. You did it." But her legacy did not end with the verdict. The media's tone shifted. Papers that once branded her a threat now wrote, "Black teen proves her strength in court." Schools in the area invited her to speak. Students who had lived in fear began to see her as a symbol, a reminder that courage and justice could defeat intimidation. At Cedar Valley's dojo, once the site of sneers, a photo of Aaliyah was hung in the center of the wall. Beneath it read, "Strength lies not in the punch, but in the heart." Time passed and Aaliyah was no longer just the new girl. She became a voice joining anti-bullying programs, standing with teachers, friends, and once fearful children who now carried themselves with pride. Brad faded quietly into the background. His family's wealth and influence could not erase the truth. For Brad himself, the loss was not just humiliation, it was a painful lesson arrogance could never outlast: resilience. One evening, as the sun painted the schoolyard red, Aaliyah stood with Jordan on the empty bleachers. He smiled. "Do you realize it yet? You didn't just win a fight. You changed this place." Aaliyah's eyes shone as she looked ahead, her voice calm but resolute. "I never wanted to be a symbol. But if life places a torch in your hand, then you have to light the way." Jordan said nothing. He didn't need to. He knew those words were truth. From a quiet black girl stepping into a new school, Aaliyah Carter had risen as a beacon of courage and justice. Her story did not end in Cedar Valley. It was only the beginning of a journey, one where her strength would guide others. For in the end, truth always finds its light, and justice only needs one voice brave enough to begin it. Aaliyah's story has come to an end, but its echoes still linger. From a girl who was overlooked and oppressed to the moment she stood tall to prove the truth and became a symbol of justice, that journey leaves us with a lesson. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the strength to keep moving forward even when fear is present. If you believe that justice and truth deserve to be heard, leave a like, share your thoughts in a comment, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss more stories that touch the heart. Every click, every share is a flame that helps us continue bringing you stories of resilience, faith, and fairness. While waiting for tomorrow's new story, we've already prepared a few others you definitely won't want to miss. They're waiting for you right beside this one. Wishing you a peaceful day, and may you always keep in your heart the courage to stand firm against injustice, just as Aaliyah did.